Hi guys. How are you guys doing? Good. Tired. I know, but guess what? It's almost graduation. Are you guys excited about that? Yeah. Holy freaking shitballs, right? Like, you guys have gone through 2 days of intense training that most people never get to go through in their lives, especially startups. Like, I hope you guys are not taking this for granted, because I have been training startups for the last 5 years, and it's usually the founders that get this kind of information, and the rest, everybody's kind of SOL. They have to figure it out on their own. But True is investing in you guys to be here to learn what it's actually going to take to get you guys to the top and be successful, and to not freak out too much. Because there's going to be some freak out moments. There have to be. That's the magic of chaos. That's the magic of being at a startup. That's why you're here, right? Or else you would have gone off and worked at a library. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe libraries are more exciting than they used to be. But here, today, we're going to be talking about some things that might be a little bit different than what you've seen in the last 2 days, and maybe not. Nothing is going to be anything new, nothing life-shattering, because you really, truly already know everything I'm going to tell you. It might just be in a very different sequence than you've seen it before. And the beautiful part about being here today is that learning a new sequence helps you apply differently to things in your life. So what I'm going to teach you here does not just apply to your startup. It's going to apply to life, which is pretty freaking amazing, right? Because you can't just pretend like startup is your life, although for some of you, that's probably the only thing you think about most of the time. Your startup is your life. But let's go a little bit more into the boring stuff. This is what I call the boring stuff. My background. This is what everybody needs to know, the resume, right? What's in the background? I graduated from this campus. Whoop-de-doo. Awesome. Okay, you all have a degree. Who freaking cares? Okay, I ran the National Science Foundation Innovation Corps. What does that mean? Is anybody here familiar with the National Science Foundation? Awesome. What does the NSF do?
We just applied for the grants.
Okay. I don't know. Just give me the money.
I can't. Yeah. If you have any contacts there.
Have they given you money yet?
We're waiting back on one of them right now. We've only sent one and we're ready another one right now.
Okay, awesome. So you're in the middle. I can teach you how to get the money. So yeah, and a lot of the things that you're gonna learn here applies to how you get the money from them. So there you go. So those are the contacts I can give you of how to learn things to apply to get the money. Awesome. And somebody else raised their hand about the National Science Foundation.
Same sort of thing, right?
Same sort of thing.
To get money for your research in different areas.
Yeah, they're like, just give me the money. Awesome. So this is important for you guys to know, okay? Because it applies to what you're doing or not doing at your startup. The NSF is an organization that pours billions of dollars into universities' labs, research labs, on a yearly basis, okay? Why does that matter? Why does it apply to you? It applies to you because a lot of these programs and a lot of these products that come out of the universities never go anywhere. They stay in the lab. So there's incredible research being done, things that could save people's lives, but it's never going anywhere because it gets stuck in the politics of the lab, and nobody is being taught how to commercialize that, okay? So Steve Blank directly worked with the National Science Foundation to create what's called Innovation Corps. I was recruited and hired by UC Berkeley to come and run those cohorts for Berkeley, Stanford, and UCSF. That was the very first time that we ran a lean startup cohort for biotech. Before that, it was thought that you could not apply these principles to biotech or the medical field. But we were wrong, and we realized it applies to anyone, tech or non-tech. And I got to work directly with my favorite people, which were the scientists and the engineers. Why were they my favorite people? Because they already know how to run experiments and not feel like failures when an experiment doesn't work. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that and why that matters. So here's the cool part. After I learned that, I told my boss, hey, we're onto something here. This is really cool. Other people need to know about this. And I said, and guess what? I'm fluent in Spanish. So we sold the model to other universities. We started running cohorts in Mexico, several cities, in Uruguay, in Tunisia. They do not speak Spanish. But it was the first time that I was being translated into French and Arabic. It was a really cool experience. It's one of the weirdest things when you're talking and you hear blah, 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 both sides. You're like, ah! Am I supposed to listen to myself or to them? You don't know what's going on. And we have the corporate clients. I've worked with Microsoft Garage, with Lyft, Citrix Startup Accelerator, AT&T Foundry. Now, all of these organizations, except for Lyft, who at the time was still, they're not a massive corporation yet, but all the other ones, they were all innovation labs. What does that tell you? They're all trying to figure out what you guys are doing. And they're learning it through the principles that we're going to be discussing today and the stuff that you've been learning for the last day. But before I move on from this, I want to tell you the real resume. This one sounds all nice and fancy, right? Because it's like, oh man, she's worked with those corporations, blah, blah, blah. You've all done incredible things. You all have a degree from an amazing university. And you're here right now, which shows that you've gone through the grueling process of getting hired at a startup. With funding, by the way. It's another thing to start a startup in Silicon Valley when you have no funding. That's not real. That's just a hobby. Here's the real resume. My parents came to this country right after they got married in Mexico. I'm the first person born in the US in my family. I'm the oldest of 7. And the statistics show for someone like me, I should be working at McDonald's, probably, and Burger King, and Jack in the Box, or whatever else is in California, and have 2 or 3 or 4 kids from 3 or 4 different baby daddies. Now, and then I went to UC Berkeley on the full ride scholarship against my parents' will. I actually forged my signature on the admissions papers. Shh, don't tell my mom. She'll find out when she sees this shit. Okay. Awesome. But you don't tell her, okay? And then I was the smartest person in the room. In high school. I got to college. And guess what? The days that I got D's on my paper, I was like, oh, I didn't fail, thank God. Whew. It was so freaking hard. Why? I did not know the system. I did not know the process. I never learned how to study. So what did I have to learn? How to study. So I got my ass in gear, figured out what I needed to do, and after that, I got all B's and A's and graduated with a pretty high GPA. And then I was like, woohoo, got a degree in hand. Let's go work for a corporation. Started working for a corporation. And I was like, this is it. This is my jam. This is amazing. And then I graduated. And I finished that year in the corporation. And I was like, is this it? I have to start all over again. Why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you all this because life is ironic sometimes. You're here for a reason. And I'm also going to share a story with you that is pretty vulnerable for me, but I'm going to share it with you because I think it's something that's going to help you in your journey in life and for your startup. It's pretty ironic that I'm in this room today because I graduated 10 years ago from this campus. And in the room downstairs, another building in Anderson Auditorium, which you've gone to a couple times now, yes, familiar with Anderson Auditorium. You'll probably remember in the entrance, 4th row back, there's probably still some drool that I left there. Sorry, whoever sat there. at an 8 a.m. class in marketing. Here's the funny thing, though. While I was there, I was getting my undergraduate degree in communications. And I never bothered applying to the Haas Business School undergrad because I was so afraid of getting rejected. So I didn't apply. And in high school, I actually competed in several plays because I loved being on stage and making people laugh, and it was awesome. But I auditioned to 0 plays on campus because I was afraid of never getting a call back. Yet, here we are, together, 10 years later, on stage, at the business school. Isn't that ironic? That's freaking weird. That's freaking weird how that happens. But I'm telling you all this because even though sometimes you're going to be scared about doing something, you're going to have the courage to do the right thing when it matters. And I tell you the real resume because you can see this and think, oh, that's so easy, it's so linear. But who here thinks that your career and your success is going to be one specific milestone after another and like no obstacles? Okay. Who has had a shit ton of stuff to go through to get to where you are right now? Yeah, it's called life. Okay? And I'm telling you all that because you're going to be successful in this startup, not despite that, but because of it. It is who you are, it is what forms you, and that is what's going to make you successful. And I'm going to tell you a little bitty thing here called your mindset. And we're going to discuss something in a little bit. So, I love this meme because if you only focus on the problem, you might miss the easy solution. So, if you look at that, what would you say the problem is? Go ahead. There's a gate. Awesome. That's blocking the cat. What else? And if you can do me a favor and use these little cool thingy bobbers when you're speaking, that'd be fantastic. Okay, there's a gate. What else? Anybody else have any other guesses of what the problem is? So there's a unanimous consensus that that's the gate, that's the issue.
Myopia.
What's that?
It's myopic.
It's myopic. It's a myopic view. Awesome. I love this because this is exactly where you get to think about things a little bit different. What is the real problem? The problem is the cat hasn't figured out how to get out of the box. So the problem is getting out of the box. The gate, however, is merely an obstacle. Okay? This is going to become a little more clear as we give you more examples. But the gate is not really the problem. The problem is figuring out how to get out of the box. Do you guys see the difference? It'll be a little bit more clear as we go along, but I love that because that simple glance, you're just like, oh, come on, silly. But sometimes we live here. It might not be as obvious to us, but sometimes to many other people. Alrighty, so is anybody familiar with Carol Dweck's book or her work in the psychology of mindset? Awesome. Claire, anybody else? Cool. Anybody want to talk a little bit about growth mindset versus fixed mindset?
Yeah, sure. I actually took a class with Carol.
Oh, awesome! Do you mind using your mic?
Yeah, sure. I was saying I actually took a class with Carol. She's pretty cool. She's done almost a couple of decades of work on this, and she's trying to see how people recover from failure and how they sort of bounce back. And these two mindsets, which you could be trained on, you can have one or the other initially, but there's a lot of work that you can do in terms of interventions to move from a fixed mindset where you think, your abilities are innate, like you're either smart or you're not smart. If you fail on a test, you're like, okay, I'm stupid. Whereas if you fail with a growth mindset, you would think, hey, I can practice, I can do again. Yep.
Awesome, thank you. What's your name?
Miriam?
Thank you, Miriam. Exactly. So as you see here, in the growth mindset, it says failure is an opportunity to grow. I can learn to do anything I want. Challenges help me to grow. My effort and attitude determine my abilities, blah, 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 blah. Fixed mindset. Failure is the limit of my abilities. I'm either good at it or I'm not. My abilities are unchanging. So now I'm going to ask you something really quickly. With someone with a high IQ, okay, which one of those do you think they are? Do they have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset? Could be both. Okay. Tell me a little bit more about why it could be both.
I think even they're super smart, they might don't know everything. And I see like super smart people, they're curious about outside world, and they always want to learn. It's more growth mindset. But you have other type of super smart people I met, then they think they know everything. Everybody else is stupid, so they're like more fixed mindset from my perspective.
Exactly. Absolutely, you hit the nail right on the head. So people with a super high IQ that are close are actually more correlated with the fixed mindset, typically. Why is that? Think about our school system. Are we praised truly for experimenting with things, or are we praised for getting things right? We're getting things right. So we are trained year after year after year after year. Only do things you know you're going to be good at. So here we are. You're at this startup. And the only thing that's going to let you survive the chaos and thrive through it is going to be the growth mindset. I'm going to teach you a little bit more about what that means and how to get there. But that means that you're going to have to be willing to experiment, have to be willing to fail. And here's the difference, you guys, okay? Go ahead and hold up your finger for me. Right finger or left finger, whichever one works for you. All right. Here's a test. You guys ready? Okay, awesome. I want you to point at whatever object is right in front of you. Okay, awesome. And say, it failed. Go ahead. It failed. Not I failed.
Not I failed.
Okay. What's the difference? You're going to be running tons of experiments at your startup. This is your experiment phase. You're figuring stuff out. And one of the greatest mistakes entrepreneurs make and startup founders and employees make is feeling like they're failures if something doesn't work. So if you keep associating your personal identity to an experiment, how many more of them are you going to do? Are you going to want to keep doing experiments? No, right? Because you're going to feel like what every time you do it? You're going to feel like a failure. Does that feel good? No. So this is one of the key things that I learned from working with my scientists and the engineers from the NSF program was once I switched the table on them and showed them that they run experiments in the lab all the time, thousands of them, and they don't associate their identity to whether one of the experiments worked or another one worked, right? They're just different variables. So if we apply that strategy and that methodology to what you guys are doing at your startup and to your own personal life, and not identifying personally to the experiment, remember, it failed, not I failed. Because the second you tell yourself, I'm a failure, it's going to be really hard to continue running any more experiments or even to stay motivated to do the work that you need to do. So, has anybody heard of this term, the adaptability quotient? Good, awesome, because it's new research. I learned this from my friend Natalie Fratto from the Silicon Valley Bank. The adaptability quotient is, as it reads, our aptitude for successfully navigating change. What does that mean? Like, really? Right? It's all fancy with the word quotient and everything. I just learned how to spell it like 5 minutes ago on Google. It means a little bit of the story of your life. Kind of like the story I told you about my life, growing up, and everything that has happened up to my life now. It's kind of like being resourceful, but it's how adaptable are you to variables, to change. Do you freak out immediately something is out of place? Or do you go with the flow and choose to be open to what's next? So, I've done a couple of things. I'm going to do 2 things. One is, if you notice and you're following on the printed slides, that some of the slides I'm going to cover are missing on purpose. Some have been added, and some are out of order on purpose. Why would I do that to you? Anybody?
To see if we're actually paying attention.
That's one possibility, to see if you're actually paying attention. What else? Why else might I do this to you?
Kind of to advocate the aha effect, where our minds will bleed and then probably show a picture which we expected, but then you say something prediction and we like, aha.
Okay, cool. Kind of like for the aha effect. Yes?
So that we don't just turn the page and do everything by rote.
So you don't just turn the page and do everything kind of like how you're expecting by rote, right? What's on the screen, you guys? I like to run things as a simulation, because all of the lean startup cohorts that I run are a simulation of a startup. So everything is chaotic, everything goes really fast. We don't stop to answer questions, we just keep going, coach. And it's all about getting customer feedback and learning as many data points as you can. Now, if I were to give you an exact page and replica of what I'm teaching you up there, I would be doing you a disservice. And I'm not here to do that. I'm here to give you exercises of an example of how to adapt. Okay? So for those of you who always need a roadmap, and you need to follow it to a T, you're going to have a hard time in startup land. Because that's not how it works. Literally, the only constant is change. It is. It's the magic of chaos, I call it. And you were attracted to it for a reason. So I want you to think about, this has probably already happened. For those of you sitting in your chair right now thinking, well, this is annoying. I don't have the slides, I don't have this, I don't have that. Catch your internal talk. Because it has nothing to do with the slides that I have or don't have up there. It has to do with how your mind chooses to see change when you don't know what's going to happen. And that is the life of your startup. So, how do you become more adaptable? I already taught you an example. You can do this to your teams. Change things up on purpose when it's not going to hurt them or it's not going to hurt your milestones for your products. Because there are going to be things that change all the freaking time. But you can do things to change and help them see what they need to do differently. Here's another way. I'm going to throw you for a loop. Everybody, stand up, grab your things, and move to a different seat. Do not sit with anybody from your team. And do it as quickly as possible and as safely as possible. Go. So many of you are thinking right now, well, this is annoying. I just got settled. I don't like this seat. I want to be in the front, or I want to be in the back, or I came here early for a reason. What's your problem? I know what you guys are thinking. I know I would be too. But I challenge you to think of the adaptability quotient. How do you become more adaptable? It is a skill. For some people, it comes more natural, and for others, you need to really train it. So you need to teach yourself, okay, am I frustrated for a really good reason here? Or is this my constant to get frustrated when something doesn't go my way? Because I'm going to tell you, that's going to be a pretty miserable life at your startup. Because things are always changing. And if you think that's beautiful, you're in the right space. And if you think that's frustrating and you hate it, got some bad news for ya. But I have a feeling everyone in this room thinks that little bit of chaos is kind of fun. Yeah? You guys like that risk factor of not knowing what's going to happen all the time and making your own job description and making shit up as you go? Yeah, I know. And for my engineers in the room, for those of you coding and creating the physical hardware, this applies even more to you. Why? There are ways of writing your code where you can isolate the sections that are going to be more prominent to change. This is one of the things that I see a lot of software engineers make a mistake, where they assume whatever they're building, they make their baby, they bring it over, you have a meeting and you change everything and they go back and they're like, took me 10 hours to do it. And they get super pissed off. Why? Because they assume if they built it and they coded it, it's done. Why? Because that's how we're taught in school. You turn it in, check off, bye. But in startup land, is that how it works? No, you guys know that's not how it works. So I want you guys to remember this. You all know what IQ is. EQ, which I know you've heard of a lot about, emotional intelligence. I've heard several talks in the last 2 days, and it's something that's not new to the market. You've heard a lot about that. But we were missing now one piece of the puzzle, and I call this the Mindset Trifecta. The AQ. Okay? Your adaptability quotient. So I want you to remember this, that if you don't have all three, you're going to be missing an important part of like the three-legged stool. So, how many of you have worked at a traditional corporation before? Awesome. The reason I bring this up is because at traditional corporations, we are praised, and I've worked there as well, we are praised for something that's called pattern recognition, right? Why is that? Because at a traditional corporation, you've already got the product, you've got the customers, you got a process, you have a system, don't F with it. Yeah? You're supposed to follow the system, follow the process, and you'll be fine. HR won't get on your back. However, at a startup, and anything that has to do with innovation and something new, I want you to think about something that I call gap recognition. Because in your world, it's not about following a system or a process. That doesn't exist yet. It will be created later on down the line. But right now, what are the gaps in your team, in your product, in the market, and so many others to think about, right? So I want you guys to think about that difference. So now that we've covered a little bit about the mindset, I want to get a little bit more into the method. And let me tell you real quickly why I even talk about mindset. Because a lot of people are like, yeah, get to the nitty gritty. Give me the principles. Give me the strategy. And I say, hold your horses. Why? After running over 1,000 students through the Lean Startup Principles in different countries, everybody with amazing talent, I realized something. The traditional Lean Startup model does not teach mindset principles. We weren't teaching that. And people were quitting because they were getting frustrated, not because the startup was failing. Now remember that. People were quitting because they were frustrated with all the changes instead of because the product or the startup was failing. And I don't want that to be you guys. And we learned that those people that were most adaptable, that were the most coachable, were the ones that were getting the most out of this. And guess what? Even when the startup didn't work, at least that one, they came out super excited from the program because they realized, now I know the process to go through. Because again, they disassociated themselves from the identity of it failed, not I failed. Okay, so I wanted to give you guys kind of a background as to why that's so important, because a lot of people don't understand that. Okay, awesome. So typically, when I run the Lean Startup classes or like intros, I talk about validating the market and building an MVP. You guys already did that. Check. Getting customers and building market traction. You guys already did that. Good job. And I also talk about getting funding from VCs or angel investors. You guys already did that. Kick ass. Here's a funny thing though. Don't become arrogant because you've already gotten funding. What do I mean by that? Sometimes early stage startups, when they get funding in the beginning, think that that means they've already validated the market and their product is just going to skyrocket. That's not true. You guys are in testing phase. True Ventures is trusting in you that you're going to go out and kick some butt to continue testing and continue changing, which is called pivoting, right? That's the term we like to use in this world of Lean Startup. So I want to discuss a little bit about features versus benefits. What does this mean? Has anybody ever talked about features versus benefits? I know some of you have already done Lean Startup courses. Anybody want to take a stab at features versus benefits? I see your head nodding over there, sir.
I'm assuming it's, I don't know exactly, but I'm guessing it's don't talk about features, talk about the benefits that will have on something instead.
Absolutely. Want to give us an example from your startup?
Well, right now, one of the products I'm working on is Holden products, and one of the ideas would be, we've got this huge list of features on the pricing page, and our messaging right now is very specific. it's very much, it's very confusing right now, but it's very much,
Would you mind turning on your mic, please?
sorry.
The idea that you can talk about how
This is going to give you,
access to reporting, but it's not going to tell you what the reporting is going to do for you. Is that going to help you make better decisions? Is that going to help you capture customers, what they want, things like that? That's kind of the problem we're running into right now.
Okay, cool. So, with that roundabout answer, thank you, by the way, because he gave me an example of what probably 99.9% of you guys are going through right now. Because it's not easy. It's not easy to really differentiate. Here's the thing, you guys. Your customers buy the benefits, not the features. Remember that. Your customers buy the benefits, not the features. It would be the equivalent of me saying and coming, hey, you guys, I just made this really cool new pill that on command, whenever I click this cool little button, releases 100,000 new red blood cells into your system. And you're like, okay, like, what do I need that for? What if instead I came and told you, I just cured cancer? And then what if I told you, I just said the same thing? You might say to me, well, no, you didn't. On one hand, you were saying blah, blah, blah. And then you said X, Y, Z. That was an example of one, me describing the features versus the benefits. Do you guys see the difference? Awesome, because that's going to be one of the biggest things you come across. If you don't remember anything else from the talk, this is one of the biggest things I want you to remember. Going back to your startup is, even in your meetings, are you discussing only the features? And if you do discuss the features, it's important to talk about them, by the way, but always discuss what is the benefit to the end user. Always. And sometimes you won't know what it is. Sometimes you need to go out into the market and find that out, which I recommend highly. So I also want to talk to you guys about what does it mean to translate tech talk into tech talk. Who loves their tech lingo? I see some no's, some yeses. The engineering team? Constantly fighting with the marketing team? We don't understand what you're saying. You're just too stupid to understand. Sound familiar? See some head nods. This is why Lyft brought me in. Because their teams were not understanding each other. They thought they had the same goal in mind, but they were not speaking the same language. Because just look at this slide. Which one of the two tech talk terms is easier for your brain to decipher? It's not a trick question. The second one. But there are more letters. Why is that one easier for your brain to decipher?
Familiar.
It's familiar. It's already anchored into something that your brain already understands. Why do I bring this up? I bring this up because sometimes when we're in the land of innovation and creativity and entrepreneurship, we try to get a little too creative and too techy. So it makes sense to write tech talk because we think we're cool. But really, you're hindering your team's capacity to understand what the heck you're talking about. And if you hinder your team's capacity to understand what you're talking about, guess what happens to the customers? More confusion. Okay? So when I mean about translating technical terms, I mean spell them out in layman's terms for your customer. Not just your customer, for your team. Have meetings where the engineering team, 1 or 2 people, talk about what they're working on, and other teams that have nothing to do with that project say back to them, so what I hear that you're working on is X, Y, and Z. And they say yes or no. That is one of my specialties, translating technical talk, technical jargon into something that people can actually use, and guess what? Other than actionable items. Because if they're not actionable, what happens? Gets thrown out the window and nobody can execute. So, along with what I learned running all of these lean startup courses, I learned a little bit about what we were already discussing about testing things, right? And you need to become a mad scientist. What does that mean? What does it truly mean to become a mad scientist, other than truly actually becoming a mad scientist? And running a, what's it called, a flex capacitor or something like that? Wasn't his latest version, like, didn't it run on the fuel, wasn't it food? Like compost? That's pretty advanced, right? For his time. This is what it means. You need to experiment, iterate, repeat. Here's the thing. A lot of startups, when they've gotten to the phase that you've gone, or they've already gotten the funding, they stop doing the first one. Because they're like, we already found product market fit, we're good. But it changes over time. The more you grow, Uber had to change their strategy, Airbnb had to change their strategy, and many other people have had to change their strategy, both startup land and in corporations. I'll give you an example that I like to talk about from Peter Diamandis, who's the founder of Singularity University, and I'm a mentor over there. What happened to Kodak, you guys? Yes?
They invented the digital imaging sensor, and then the CEO decided that they were not a digital imaging company, and so they left that technology and killed their company.
They went freaking bankrupt when they themselves are the ones that had the technology to bring them, they had the emergent technology to bring them into the next level of business. But Peter describes it this way. Peter Diamandis. He said, Kodak was incorrect in what they thought they were. They thought they were in the business of paper, film. But they were actually in the business of making memories. Think about that. A massive conglomerate tanked. They were a freaking monopoly. Globally. And they went under. Why? Because they chose not to experiment with the technology that they had created. That's what I mean about leaving innovation in the lab. It's pretty useless there, unless it goes out to the market. So when you start to think, we're good, we got it, we don't need to be running any more experiments, think about Kodak. Don't become so arrogant as to believe that you don't need to be running more experiments and testing things out. So, what's the next phase? You guys have gone through the first 3 major check marks that I talked about. The next phase is scaling, right? That's what you guys are doing next. So, one of the important things to do with that is always be testing your assumptions. And we're going to do a little exercise so you can see what it means to be testing your assumptions. All right, so all of you have a little a piece of white paper. Go ahead and grab that. You have a pen. If you don't have one, find one, aka practice adaptability. We're going to do something real quick. And this is a personal exercise. You're not going to be sharing with anyone right now. Okay? Silently for 2 minutes, you're going to draw the following. Draw the perfect backpack for a person of the opposite gender. Go. Alrighty. Pens down. So this is not a test of your stick figure out ability, because that's all I can draw. And even those are crooked. I don't care if you can design or you can't. The idea is, can you get your ideas on paper and can you talk about them? Okay, so now you're going to share with your potential customer. So who is your potential customer in this scenario? Who did you draw this for? Yeah. So find a partner of the opposite gender. It's okay if you guys are in groups. Ideally 2. And before you start sharing, I'm so glad you guys are so excited about it. There are some instructions. I want you to share only for 30 seconds what the features are. And your partner's going to time you. Okay, so partner, be ready to time them. They got 30 seconds. And it's okay, they don't have to talk about benefits right now. Just share the features. Not going to be that mean to you. 30 seconds to talk about the features. Pay attention, partner, because you're going to see if they apply to you. And then the person who's presenting is going to shut up and listen to the feedback. You're not allowed to interject and be like, oh, you didn't understand. You shut up and listen until that person is done giving you their feedback. And then you're going to swap. Are the instructions clear? All right. How many times are you allowed to interrupt the feedback? 0. Good job. Yes.
Can we describe features that we didn't actually are not capable of drawing?
Yes. Very good question. Yes, because that would be something I would have to do. You can describe features that you didn't draw yet. Don't go on forever and ever and ever. You can say what colors you wanted to put on there, but you were limited, obviously. So, because I have seen some pretty fun things on there, especially in other countries. So go ahead and go. Who would like to share about what they learned, about what they draw and their assumptions, and what they learned about their potential customer? Not a trick question. I just want to see what you guys learned. Yes, please. Your name?
My name's Colin.
Hey, Colin.
One of the things I learned in the feedback was I was focused on ways that could help sort of in the day-to-day more practical aspects, but my partner identified that I didn't touch on anything that would set it apart and make it unique in terms of what is already out there versus what we're inventing now.
Awesome. That's a great point. Would you like to share, partner? What's your name? Marlene.
Yeah. So in terms of what I learned from my partner.
Yeah. What you learned about your assumptions, and then what you learned from your potential customer.
So my assumptions were that to begin, that a guy would want a bag that could certainly take him everywhere. So I did make the correct assumption that it would be good to have different compartments to even separate dirty stuff if you went to the gym or not, and just different compartments for different things. But I had also noted and sort of learned from my partner that this is not meant to be the be everything bag that you might want to have these different bags for different things. So that was a wrong assumption. And as far as color, he noted that he was attracting more to muted. But I think even my own feedback was that I didn't really focus on what made this so different than what's out there. Like beyond that, like I highlighted that this would be a bag that could, expand, beyond, its original size if you needed it to.
Awesome. Thank you. Who else would like to share? Yes, please. Your name?
My name is Pavla.
Pavla.
So I have here this amazing backpack.
Do you mind using your mic, please?
So I have here this amazing backpack where I describe all the amazing
I love how she's already pitching us. Here's this amazing backpack.
Well, I don't know. I just really named all the amazing features.
Okay.
I slightly forgot about the benefits, and I didn't feel like that the person is in love with the product.
So you fell in love with your baby? Of course, your baby's always pretty. It's hard to tell somebody their baby's ugly, huh?
The first reaction was, yeah, I don't know. So that's kind of not convincing, but yeah.
Well, what did you learn about what your customer does need?
I found that they does need to kind of express around the backpack something which would make it, this is the backpack I really want. I have no idea what it is, but it wasn't happening with mine.
Awesome. So if you had more time to ask more questions, would you know what to ask in terms of what they would need and how to find the proper features?
I don't really think it's necessary about what they need. It's about the feeling around the whole backpack which you're trying to put in place. It's kind of this non-measurable things which are kind of just in here, probably.
Okay. Sometimes it's tricky, right? Yes, Marley.
I think in a real sort of in an actual situation, I might have wanted to do some contextual research beforehand and sort of get to understand sort of a day in his life to see what what his backpack either carries or like what he doesn't like currently about it. I felt like I was missing some initial information. I was going more about my own assumptions, having a dialogue in my own head versus the reality.
Absolutely. You hit the nail right on the head, my friend. She wanted to find out a little bit more about the contextual research about how his life currently works with or without the backpack. What he likes, what he doesn't like. I want you to remember that. What Marlene just said is exactly what you need to be doing with your customers in the marketplace. Why? Because usually you do what you guys just did. You draw something, sometimes you make the product, and then you go get feedback. By then, you've wasted your time and your resources. Because no matter what, you're going to be making assumptions. They might as well be smart ones. Thank you, Marlene. That's awesome. And give a hand for yourselves for running that exercise. I know that's not, it's one of those ones where you end up getting kind of frustrated, kind of giggle, kind of like, well, I know what I want, but what do they want? Shit. Right? And then you think you're super excited to be like, this is perfect for them. And they're like, eh. And you're like, Does that happen in startup land? Yeah. So why do I give you something that's so boring? Like a backpack. I can tell you right now, till this day, I have not found the perfect backpack for me. Till this day. I can't find something super cute and functional for someone like me. So when I run this exercise, it's very selfish because I'm trying to see if somebody's going to make something for me. So that's why I run that. And for you to learn assumptions. That's a nice bonus. So we're going to run through really quickly. Something that people don't like to talk about is that customers lie. They don't do it on purpose, you guys. They don't do it to hurt your feelings. They do it to make themselves look good. And we're going to run through what it means to identify the real problem and how you're going to learn about this in a quick little video from Steve Blank.
Hi, Karina. Thanks for taking the time to talk. I'm working on a mobile app to help people track their diet. So are you generally a healthy eater?
Oh yeah, I'm a really healthy eater. I love vegetables and fresh produce. So yeah, super healthy.
Okay, great. Thanks for your time.
Oh, okay.
One of the key things you're trying to accomplish talking to customers is trying to understand the details about the customer archetype. This wrong way was just kind of a closed-end question that just got to a yes and no. You want to know everything about them. How do they spend their day? Where do they spend their money? Who are they? What are some other things that you might need to know about them? For example, what do they read? What kind of blogs? What kind of websites? Newspapers? Do they watch TV? Etc. In an optimal world, you'd understand everything your potential customer did, used, and bought from the moment they got up to the moment they went to bed. And so your job is to start asking these questions so you could get a view of the whole customer.
Hi, Karina. Thanks for taking the time to talk. I'm working on a mobile app to help people track their diet. Would you say you're generally a healthy eater?
Oh yeah, I'm a really healthy eater. I eat a lot of vegetables and fresh produce. Very healthy.
That's great. So can you tell me what you ate yesterday?
Well, yesterday I had coffee, breakfast, and then I was pretty busy, so I skipped lunch, and I was tired when I got home, so I ordered a pizza.
Okay.
Let's see. Well, I mean, this week wasn't a very good week for me, so I think I had fast food on Monday, then I had like a burger on Tuesday, and then
Okay, so if this week was a bad week, what about the week before that?
well, the week before that was more mixed. Yeah, I think I might have gone pizza again one day, but some of the other days are better than that.
Like, what'd you eat on your good days?
Let's see. Well, I had some roast chicken on Monday for dinner, and then on Tuesday, well, we ate out. It was someone's birthday, so we had some meatloaf, and then for dinner I had sandwich. Oh yeah, I always have dessert.
Any quick comments and shares on what you learned from that video? In terms of how customers lie. Yes, your name, please? Samida.
Yeah. Basically, like you need to ask factual questions to the customer and don't take their opinions like about themselves, or try to ask questions and then make your own conclusions as opposed to asking them. Like get the data and then analyze it yourself. But what they did at first was like evaluate your eating habits and tell me if it's healthy or not. You should get the data and then make the actual analysis yourself.
Absolutely. That's a great catch. You capture the data because the customer's not going to make the conclusions for you, right? That's your job. Awesome. Anyone else? Yes, your name?
I'm Matt.
Hi, Matt.
It's very similar to sales. It's something where we actually train, when we train salespeople, is that you have to quiet the third voice that you're trying to solve a problem, so you have to forget the actual problem to ask a question that will deliver an open-ended question. Because in the first part, it was a very closed-ended question that drove the answer that obviously the person wanted to hear. Whereas in like our situation at Peloton, we had to hear everything because fitness is different for everyone, health is different for everyone, so we have to open up and not prejudge the situation before opening the question.
Right, because then you end up with false data points, right? AKA biased, which happens a lot in this land. And that's why I like to show that video real quickly. I want to give you a quick example that I learned from one of my favorite design thinking books. And this is a cleaner from P&G, Procter & Gamble, one of the largest companies in the world. And I like to talk about this example in particular because it's fun. And it makes a point. But a few years ago, probably a little over a decade now, P&G had a problem. The problem was the customers kept asking for a stronger detergent, a stronger liquid to clean the floors. So they went into the lab, hired more chemists, and made new detergents. And they would send it out into the market. Woohoo! Right? Piece of cake. And the customers kept coming back with the same thing. We want a stronger detergent. So when P&G started like freaking scrambling, they're like, what is wrong with these people? We can't make it any stronger. It's gonna destroy, it's gonna eat through the floors, right? Like the chemists were going freaking bonkers until they went through this process, the design thinking process. What I mean by that is they had to identify what the real problem was. Remember our little kitty friend in the beginning? So I ask you now, if the customers kept asking for a stronger detergent for their floors, what was the real problem? The floors weren't getting clean enough. Absolutely. So why would P&G keep creating stronger detergent?
They assumed that the floors weren't getting clean enough because the detergent wasn't strong enough.
Exactly. Because they were focused on the product they already had instead of solving the actual problem the customers had. And you got it, my friend. So they created our handy dandy Swiffer friend. That's where the Swiffer came from. Where they finally realized that people were asking for cleaner floors. Now, whether you think the Swiffer does a good job at cleaning your floors or not, that was the solution to their issue, and the people stopped clamoring for the stronger soap and detergent. So now, you see how all of this is tied into what is your personal mindset. If P&G had gotten frustrated and just sort of given up and they're like, oh, we can't make them happy regardless, they would have never come up with a product that makes them millions, probably billions by this point. So I'm going to leave you with one thing after a slide of resources, is that when you think about your life and what you've gone through, think of how every single thing that you've been through makes you adaptable and resourceful to everything you're going to see in your startup now. And remember this one phrase. There are moments that define you, and then there are moments you define. I'm going to repeat that. There are moments that define you, and then there are moments you define. And there are going to be plenty of those opportunities at your startup. Awesome, guys. So I want to leave you with some resources. One is a book where I got the example, the Procter & Gamble one, which is fascinating. It's one of the best design thinking books I've found out there. And learning how to interview your customers, that video that you saw from Steve Blank, there's a whole link of all of those on Vimeo. But I want you to, there's a free PDF that's like a 15-minute read called Talking to Humans. You can get that at talkingtohumans.com. And that'll help you elaborate and ask the right questions instead of creating the biased questions. And also a mindset quiz from Carol Dweck. Seeing which areas, because we all have areas where we're fixed and areas where we're growth mindset, okay? So it's not just like you're always growth and you're always fixed. No, we have different areas of our life. So you can actually take a quiz for free on mindsetonline.com. Now, you guys, the most important part is I want to know what happens next. Keep me posted. Send me an email. Let me know how things are going. Let me know how I can help you. And also send me ways where I can celebrate with you. There are going to be weeks that totally freaking suck. And that's okay. But there are going to be weeks and days where something goes freaking phenomenal. Share that with me. Share it with the world. Because I care about what you're going through at your startup and as a person. And it's time for graduation. Congrats, you guys.